We've all been there. You meet someone, you give your energy, your time, your affection, and then suddenly they start pulling away. They don't return the calls. They get vague with their answers. They give you breadcrumbs, but never the meal. And what do most of us do? We panic. We chase. We plead. We over-explain. We cry. But here's the truth. Chasing someone who is avoiding you only teaches them that they can give you less and still keep you hooked. Crying in front of someone who isn't meeting your needs might win you a moment of sympathy, but it won't build the respect, attraction, or love you deserve. So what do you do instead? You reclaim your power. When they avoid, you don't chase, you center yourself. When they go cold, you don't beg, you invest in people and passions that give back. When they disappear, you don't collapse, you stand taller. Because the right person for you doesn't need to be begged into showing up. The right person won't make you question if you're worthy of love. And the most magnetic thing you can do in these moments isn't to fight for their attention. It's to protect your energy. You don't win love by proving you're enough for someone who can't see your value. You win love by showing through your actions that you won't settle for less than you deserve. So don't chase. Don't cry. Don't beg. Instead, rise. When you find yourself drawn to someone who pulls away, the natural impulse is often to chase. It feels instinctive. They retreat, and something in you screams to close the gap. You call, you text, you try to remind them of the good moments. You attempt to reassure them of your feelings. But here's the problem. Every time you chase an avoidant person, you send them a message that reinforces their behavior. You show them that they can give less and still hold on to you. And once that dynamic is established, it's incredibly hard to undo. Imagine this: a person begins stepping back, not returning your messages as quickly, not making plans with the same enthusiasm. Instead of meeting that behavior with calm self-assurance, you panic, you lean in, you double down on the effort, you give them more attention in hopes that they'll remember how good it feels to have you around. But what actually happens is the opposite. They don't suddenly realize your value. They don't wake up to how important you are. Instead, they begin to take your presence for granted. Why? Because you've taught them that even when they pull away, you will still be there. You will do the chasing. You will carry the weight. People often confuse chasing with proving love. They think, if I don't fight for this, it will slip away. But genuine love doesn't require you to abandon your dignity to keep it. When someone avoids, withdraws, or stops showing up, it is not your job to run after them and make them feel secure while you feel depleted. Chasing is like pouring water into a leaking cup. No matter how much you give, it never fills, and eventually you're left drained. Now, consider the mindset of the avoidant. They often create space not because they're waiting for you to chase, but because that's their pattern. They protect themselves by distancing. When you rush to close that distance, it confirms their belief that they don't need to step up. Why would they meet you halfway when you're willing to travel the full distance for them? Why would they invest in building intimacy when you're proving that you'll accept crumbs in the name of keeping them close? Chasing also robs you of your own value. You stop being seen as a person with standards and boundaries, and instead you become someone trying desperately to secure validation. That desperation erodes attraction. What starts as longing and passion quickly turns into imbalance, where one person holds the power and the other clings. The irony is that the more you chase, the more they pull away. It becomes a cycle. Their avoidance triggers your pursuit. Your pursuit reinforces their avoidance. Breaking that cycle means stepping back when they step back, not in a cold or punitive way, but in a way that says, I see what's happening and I choose not to play this game. You stop rewarding avoidance with more attention. You let their actions speak for themselves. If they disappear, you don't fill the silence with messages. If they become inconsistent, you don't try harder to secure consistency. Instead, you give space and direct your energy to places where it is reciprocated. And here's the subtle but powerful shift. When you stop chasing, you teach both yourself and them a new lesson. You remind yourself that your value isn't tied to someone else's availability. You show that you're willing to lose someone rather than lose your self-respect. And you demonstrate to them that if they want to keep you, they have to step forward instead of pulling away. In every relationship, your behavior sets the standard for how you're treated. If you reward distance with effort, you'll get more distance. But if you match withdrawal with calm detachment, you create the conditions for either genuine connection or a clean exit. Both outcomes serve you better than chasing someone who is running the other way. When someone begins to withdraw from you, it can stir a deep sense of fear. That fear often pushes people into a place where they use tears as a tool, sometimes consciously, sometimes not. Crying in the face of avoidance is not unusual. It's a human response to rejection, abandonment, or the terror of losing something important. The problem isn't the emotion itself. The problem is believing that crying will change the way the avoidant person shows up. Many people confuse emotional display with influence. They think, if I show how much this hurts me, maybe they'll realize how serious this is, maybe they'll care more, maybe they'll stop pulling away. But that rarely happens. In fact, what it usually does is diminish respect and shift the dynamic in a way that harms you. Tears can create sympathy, but sympathy doesn't create respect. An avoidant person who sees you crying because they aren't giving enough might feel bad in the moment, but that guilt does not magically convert into commitment, consistency, or love. At best, it might pull them back temporarily, but it doesn't address the underlying problem, their unwillingness or inability to meet your needs. And so the cycle repeats. They withdraw again, you cry again. They momentarily soften, and the relationship continues to wobble on unstable ground. There's a subtle but crucial distinction between showing vulnerability and using emotion as a form of persuasion. Vulnerability can be powerful when it's authentic and balanced. It shows depth, humanity, and truth. But when tears become a repeated response to someone's lack of effort, the effect is different. It communicates that your stability depends on their behavior, and that gives them the upper hand. They don't need to step into the role of a true partner. They just need to soothe you long enough to keep you attached. That dynamic doesn't build attraction. It builds resentment. Think about the psychology behind respect. Respect grows when someone sees you as strong, centered, and capable of handling life with or without them. It grows when you have standards that you enforce, not by punishing, but by simply refusing to settle for less. When you collapse into tears every time someone avoids you, you unintentionally signal the opposite, that their absence dismantles your stability, that their avoidance dictates your emotional state. Over time, that erodes the foundation of respect. Instead of being drawn closer to you, the avoidant may begin to feel suffocated, pressured, or even burdened. This doesn't mean you need to hide your emotions or pretend you're unaffected. It means that your emotional expression should come from a place of self-awareness and strength, not from desperation. There's a difference between saying, I feel hurt when you disappear, and I need more consistency to feel secure in this relationship, and collapsing into tears hoping that your pain will guilt them into showing up differently. The first approach communicates self-respect and clarity. The second communicates helplessness. One invites respect, the other undermines it. The most attractive people are not those who never feel pain, but those who know how to experience pain without letting it dictate their actions. They can cry, but they don't weaponize their tears. They can feel, but they don't allow those feelings to strip them of their boundaries. This balance is what makes someone magnetic, the ability to be soft without being powerless. If you want someone to truly commit, crying won't achieve it. What does is demonstrating that you have standards, that you can articulate what you need, and that you're willing to walk away if those needs consistently go unmet. Tears can communicate the depth of your feelings, but it's your actions that communicate your self-worth. An avoidant person might momentarily respond to your sadness, but they'll only truly respond to your strength. When someone starts to avoid you, the instinctive reaction is to turn all your attention toward them. You replay every conversation, analyze every message, and try to decode every silence. Before you know it, you've placed your entire sense of worth in their hands. But the truth is, when someone pulls away, that's exactly the moment when you need to pull your energy back into yourself. Instead of pouring everything into trying to fix the gap, redirect that energy into areas of your life where it can grow, where it can be seen, and where it will be valued. Shifting focus back to yourself isn't about pretending you don't care. It's about recognizing that you cannot control another person's behavior, but you can control where your time, energy, and emotions are invested. When you pour endlessly into someone who is not reciprocating, you drain your own resources. But when you decide to invest in yourself, your goals, your passions, your friendships, your health, you begin to replenish the energy that was being wasted. That shift not only makes you stronger, it makes you more magnetic, because nothing is more attractive than someone who radiates fulfillment from within. Consider how many hours people spend obsessing over why someone hasn't texted back or what their distant behavior means. Those hours are stolen from activities that could bring growth, joy, and confidence. Imagine if, instead of checking your phone for the 100th time, you went to the gym, finished that project you've been postponing, or reached out to a friend who always makes you laugh. Not only would you feel better in the moment, but you'd also be proving to yourself that your happiness is not dependent on one person's attention. That inner conviction builds strength, and strength is what makes you unshakable in relationships. When you shift the focus back to yourself, you also regain perspective. Distance from an avoidant partner often feels like a personal rejection, as though you are not enough. But in reality, their behavior says far more about their capacity for closeness than it does about your worth. By centering yourself, you remind your mind and body that you are whole, valuable, and capable with or without them. Instead of spiraling into, what did I do wrong? You anchor yourself in, what can I do right for me? That subtle shift takes you out of victim mode and puts you back in control. There's also a deeper layer to this. When you chase someone who avoids you, you train yourself to tolerate neglect. You normalize imbalance. Over time, your self-esteem erodes because you are repeatedly telling yourself, it's okay if my needs aren't met as long as they don't leave. But when you focus on yourself, you begin to retrain your mind. You start telling yourself, my needs matter, my life matters, my time matters. That inner dialogue rewrites the story. Suddenly, it becomes less about winning someone over and more about asking whether they even deserve a place in your world. Ironically, this shift often changes the relationship dynamic itself. When you stop making someone else the center of your universe, they feel the difference. You're no longer clinging, no longer anxiously proving yourself. Instead, you're rooted in your own life, busy creating joy and success on your own terms. That energy is magnetic. People are drawn to those who don't need them for validation because it creates a sense of freedom and confidence. The avoidant may notice the change and start to step closer, and if they don't, you've already built a life that's too fulfilling to mourn their absence. Redirecting your focus isn't about punishment or playing games. It's about honoring your worth. It's about recognizing that you have choices. You can spend your time waiting for someone to step up, or you can spend it building yourself into someone who doesn't wait for love, but attracts it by living fully. The person who invests in themselves doesn't just survive when someone withdraws, they thrive because their energy was never tied to one fragile connection. Magnetism isn't something you can fake. It's not about saying the perfect line, wearing the perfect outfit, or following some secret formula to get someone's attention. Real magnetism comes from self-respect. It comes from the quiet power of knowing your value and refusing to compromise it, even when someone is tempting you to settle for less. When you protect your energy and stand tall, you radiate a strength that is both rare and irresistible. Think about the difference between someone who constantly bends over backward to please and someone who has clear boundaries. The first may seem agreeable, even generous, but often that generosity comes at the cost of their own dignity. They give and give, even when it's not reciprocated, hoping that their sacrifices will eventually be rewarded. But what usually happens is that their effort gets taken for granted. Contrast that with someone who knows their worth. They're kind, they're giving, but they're also clear about what they will and will not tolerate. That clarity creates attraction because it communicates that their love is valuable, not something to be won through pity or persistence. Protecting your energy doesn't mean building walls or shutting people out. It means being intentional about where you place your time, effort, and affection. It's recognizing that attention is currency and you don't spend it recklessly on people who can't or won't give anything back. When you live with that mindset, you automatically elevate yourself. You go from being someone desperate for validation to someone who validates themselves first. That is magnetic because it shows you're not reliant on another person's approval to feel whole. Standing tall in moments of disappointment is another powerful aspect of self-respect. When someone avoids you, ignores you, or fails to show up, it's easy to shrink. You can internalize their behavior as a reflection of your worth and spiral into self-doubt. But when you decide to stand tall instead, to meet their absence with calm dignity rather than desperation. You communicate that you cannot be diminished by someone else's choices. This doesn't just impact how others see you, it transforms how you see yourself. You begin to embody the belief that your value is inherent, not negotiable. What often surprises people is how attractive strength and composure can be in these situations. Many assume that chasing, pleading, or proving love will bring someone closer. In reality, those behaviors often repel. They create pressure and imbalance. But when you hold your ground and refuse to compromise your dignity, you become someone others want to respect and draw closer to. It flips the dynamic from you needing them to them realizing they could lose you. That shift is powerful, but it only happens when your foundation is self-respect, not neediness. It's also important to understand that protecting your energy creates space for the right people to enter your life. When you spend your time chasing or crying over someone who won't meet you halfway, you're draining the very resources that could be used to connect with people who are capable of giving you more. Self-respect is not just about saying no to what doesn't serve you, it's about saying yes to what does. By holding your standards, you filter out relationships built on crumbs and open yourself to those built on genuine reciprocity. The beauty of magnetism through self-respect is that it doesn't just affect romantic relationships, it impacts every area of your life. People respect those who respect themselves. Colleagues, friends, even strangers can sense when you carry yourself with confidence and boundaries. That energy changes the opportunities that come your way and the quality of the connections you attract. It makes people want to align with you, not because you demand it, but because they recognize the value you bring simply by being centered in your worth. Love is not something you can force into existence. You cannot push someone into loving you, no matter how much effort you pour in, how many chances you give, or how many times you show up when they don't. The truth is, the right person for you won't need convincing. They won't need endless explanations of why you're worth their time. They won't require you to prove your value. They'll recognize it. They'll step toward you without hesitation because for them, being with you feels natural, not a negotiation. When you find yourself begging for love, what you're really doing is asking someone to rewrite their feelings to match your needs. That almost never works, and even if it appears to for a short time, it creates a shaky foundation. Love born out of pressure, guilt, or obligation cannot sustain itself. It may hold for a little while, but it eventually collapses because deep down, people don't want to be forced into showing up. They want to choose it freely. Real love is voluntary. It is an act of desire, not duty. Think of the relationships that feel the strongest and most secure. They're not the ones where one person begged the other to stay or constantly fought to hold on. They're the ones where both people lean in willingly, where effort flows naturally, and where consistency doesn't feel like a chore. That's because authentic love doesn't operate on coercion. It thrives on reciprocity. It's two people choosing each other, not one person dragging the other along. Trying to force love often comes from fear. Fear of being alone, fear of starting over, fear that maybe you won't find someone better. That fear convinces you to accept less than you deserve and to believe that if you just try harder, you can change the outcome. But no matter how much you chase, cry, or compromise, you can't manufacture desire in someone who isn't capable of giving it. What you can do is decide that you will no longer invest in situations where love has to be pried out of someone. The irony is that letting go of forced connections is what creates space for real ones. When you stop clinging to someone who won't meet you, you open yourself to the possibility of someone who will. But as long as you're busy fighting to keep love alive, where it doesn't naturally exist, you're unavailable for the person who would show up with ease. You cannot receive what you deserve if you're occupied holding on to what you don't. Another truth about love is that it mirrors the standards you set for yourself. If you continually chase those who won't invest in you, you're teaching yourself that your worth is negotiable. You're telling yourself that it's acceptable to settle for someone who doesn't give fully. But when you refuse to force love, you send yourself a different message, that your heart is too valuable to be wasted on half-hearted effort. That self-message is powerful, because it rewires the way you approach every relationship. It shifts your focus from trying to win someone over to asking if they are even worthy of winning you. The right person won't make you wonder if they're interested. They won't leave you analyzing every word, every silence, every delayed text. They will show up in ways that feel consistent and steady. You won't have to question their intentions because their actions will answer the question every time. That kind of love is not only possible, it's the only kind worth building a life on. And the only way to experience it is to let go of the illusion that love can be forced. So if there's one truth to carry with you, let it be this: you never need to chase, beg, or cry for someone to see your worth. The right person won't make you question whether you're enough. The right person won't pull away when things get close. The right person won't need to be convinced. They will stand beside you because they want to, not because you fought to keep them there. And the moment you stop giving your power away to those who can't meet you, you create space for those who can. Protect your energy, honor your boundaries, and always remember that real love doesn't weaken you, it strengthens you. You are not here to prove your value to someone who runs from it. You are here to share it with someone who's ready to receive it. Thank you for giving me your time, your attention, and most importantly, your openness to hear this message today. My hope is that you walk away with more strength, more clarity, and a deeper belief in your own worth. Because you don't need to chase love to have it, you need only to stand in your power, and the right love will meet you there. Thank you and take care.